Max Olson, theathletic.com, with us, covers college football, Big 12, but also many things throughout the country with David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak. Max, thank you very much. Which game, in your opinion, do you feel like a team, based on the scenario, has the most must-win this weekend in the Big 12?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, the Oklahoma State K-State game, it's just tough to assess it right now because we just don't know the status on Adrian Martinez. I kind of think that Iowa State is in a position here where it's time for them to put a run together. They're hosting Oklahoma in 11 a.m. game. OU's a slight favorite. I think if Iowa State's going to put a few wins together here and get to 6 wins and get to a bowl game, I'm not saying this is a must-win, but, man, they've got to start bringing a couple together here, and I think that starts with an OU team that's coming off a bye and a chance to kind of regroup here a little bit.
Max, as deep as the Big 12 is and as close as the games for the most part have been, is there a scenario you can see where maybe 3 or 4 teams are looking outside or outside looking in when it comes to bowl season?
That's a good question. I think that you look at the standings right now, I still think Kansas will get one more. They're the ones at 5-3 here who might be stuck for a little bit and trying to get over the hump. I think West Virginia and Iowa State are probably the two that you worry about a little bit. West Virginia's got a really tough schedule ahead. Iowa State is going to have to probably pull some upsets, honestly, in over this final stretch. I think they're good enough, and they're finally getting healthy, and that's the big difference. They just have not been healthy enough this year to play up to their potential, even when you knew it would be kind of a little bit of a rebuilding year. And I think Baylor and Texas Tech are both in good shape, and I think OU. I'm really interested to see the way OU responds in November here, because I think they do have a chance to, not to say that the issues of October are behind them by any means. There's still a lot to clean up, but I do think they have a chance to put together a little run here, finish off on a better note for year one with Venables, and potentially even be a real challenger to Oklahoma State and Bedlam.
Max, Paul asked that same question to me yesterday, and I think Oak State, Kansas State, definitely the bigger game as far as just the hype and all that. But TCU's the unbeaten, right? TCU's the one that has, the shot to do everything they still want to do. When do you think they start getting some serious consideration as one of the best teams in the country? What do they have to do, and how close are they to that conversation?
Yeah, it's a great point. We were talking about that on our podcast today. You look at the schedule ahead here, and obviously the big game ahead for TCU is against Texas down in Austin in a couple of weeks. You do wonder, can they get through West Virginia? Road trip to Morgantown, as you guys know, not the easiest. And then they get Texas Tech next week. I think it's an interesting little stretch here ahead of them where if they're 9-0 through that, really big games ahead of you. But you wonder, is there a stumble coming after, playing so many, really challenging games, top 25 opponents, obviously. And this is a team that already had their bye week during non-conference play. This is just a stretch run all the way through with no breaks. And so I think if they can get through these next two, the Texas game is huge. But in terms of the playoff conversation, obviously the first set of rankings come out next week. And you wonder how they're going to be compared to these other teams because, unfortunately, there's not a lot of margin for error if you want to make a run at the playoff here because you kind of know that, whether it's Tennessee or Georgia or somebody, there's probably going to be a one-loss team coming out of the SEC that doesn't get to play in the SEC title game. And, you can potentially say the same thing in the Big Ten.
Max, we went over a graphic that Colt Barber put up in our premium section about Texas Tech has run 100-plus plays in three games this year. They ran 7 100-plus plays from 2009 to 2021 when that's what you thought they probably did more often. Baylor under Briles ran 7-8 times during his era, or 6 or 7 times, and I think one time when they almost shocked the world and beat Oklahoma with Rule in 17. Isn't that really, turnovers, whatever, but isn't that what this game comes down to is who can control the pace, whether it's hair on fire, even though Baylor can score, or is it the complementary soak the clock, suck the clock out, run the time, and also perhaps even, although I don't think you can keep Tech fans out of it, calm them down?
Yeah, it's a good point. And, that's actually something that Zach Hitley didn't even do once last year at Western Kentucky, even when they had that thing rolling with Bailey Zappi and Jared Stearns and the Stearns brothers and everybody there. That the tempo there, I think they really are going to crank it up here going forward, and especially this week. And, I think there's definitely an advantage there. And I think you even saw it last weekend in the fourth quarter, Oklahoma State, Texas, and Oklahoma State ended up running 99 plays or 98 plays. Texas just, ran out of gas. I mean, they just, you saw a lot of broken tackles. Obviously, you saw a lot of mistakes throughout that game and penalties and stuff like that. But if you can control the game like that, if you can force your opponent to have a really long 4-hour kind of game, I think that you have a lot better chance of pulling it off. Now, that kind of comes down to game control. And when you play Baylor, more often than not under Dave Aranda, they're going to kind of control the flow of that game. And so that kind of chess match of it, and are we going to play the game the way that Zach Kitley and Tech wants to play, or are we going to play it the way that Ron Roberts and Dave Aranda and Jeff Grimes want to play? That's going to be a really interesting battle. And obviously, you guys know, I'm stoked that we're not playing this at a neutral site here. I think that atmosphere is going to be pretty electric.
Max, the Big Ten released their schedule for next year this week, and sticking with divisions, at least for the next year, my initial thought was they really needed to add USC and UCLA because the 2023 schedule is kind of bland for them. What are your thoughts on the Big Ten schedule?
It's always interesting. Like usually, if you would think like if these would get released at a different time, they'd get a lot more attention. But in the middle of a game week, it's tough. I thought that the Penn State drama yesterday was kind of amusing. They've had to start on the road. I think like 7, 8 years in a row now, and they're really tired of it and really pissed about it. I noticed the Nebraska schedule. They're starting with a Thursday night road game at Minnesota for whoever the new coach is there. I think that's an interesting challenge, and they won't get a home game until week 3. But yeah, not like. Don't have a ton of takes on that because, as you guys know, there's just so much other stuff going on.
Max Olson with us, theathletic.com on 365 Sports.
Max, how healthy do you think Adrian Martinez might be at this stage? And, I mean, what a roller coaster for K-State last week. It's just like everything, the way that it went up and down for them. And if he's not healthy, how confident are you in Will Howard that he can kind of guide the ship the rest of the way for the Wildcats?
Yeah, what a strange deal last week for K-State. I'm not sure I've seen many Big 12 games in my decade doing this where you had that many key guys get injured in one game. It was just brutal for K-State, and it's not just quarterback, but a ton of dudes. And what made it even weirder was that Tim Brando crew. They don't have a sideline reporter, so you weren't getting any updates about who was missing and how long and all that stuff. So. Not like a ton of clarity about the Adrian Martinez status, and is he going to be good to go for this game, this huge game? I think that Will Howard came in and played with some confidence and certainly threw a few dimes early on and gave his team a lead. Also made some mistakes, obviously, in the second half. I think if Colin Klein has a week to kind of get a plan prepared for Will Howard, who's a kind of a unique guy, a bigger dude, like a 245-pound quarterback, I think they're going to have a chance to score some points. But certainly, when you have the explosive rushing ability of Martinez, it's just a different deal. So huge if they can get him back. And if not, I think they'll be okay. But it's just hard to be quite as dangerous with Will Howard.
Oklahoma State has gritty wins. The win last week where they found a way in the second half to slow that thing down, and they slowly hung around, and then they got the strike. And then, of course, the win in Waco as well. And they lost that game, bang, bang, to TCU, and they blew the lead. Your thoughts about what Mike Gundy seems to do and sometimes is under the radar the way he does it?
Yeah, I think the thing that, like I said, it was the way that Oklahoma State was able to outlast Texas in that game. I thought it was really a testament to what they built, kind of not just their winning culture, but, Rob Glass, their strength coach, is one of the best in the country, and really the kind of the secret sauce behind the scenes there. I thought that was just a team that was more experienced, better conditioned, better strength. All of it kind of showed out in a game like that when you go 4 hours and it's exhausting. And certainly the difference between the experience of Spencer Sanders and the inexperience of Quinn Ewers really kind of showed up in that game. I think it's an Oklahoma State team that, are they like top 5 in the country in one category? Like, not really, no, but they're just a really good football team. Like, they're just It's not like the sexiest group, and obviously, they've had to replace a lot of guys off last year. But man, as you guys saw, it's a pretty resilient team that gets really good quarterback play, and as long as Sanders is healthy, or as we've seen, obviously, just healthy enough to play, they've got a chance to be really tough to beat every week.
Max, Ole Miss travels into College Station this weekend. Ole Miss, obviously, the disappointing loss to LSU to give them their first blemish. I'd imagine they're pretty heavy favorites here, but it is Kyle Field and all that. Having said that, suspensions this week for Jimbo Fisher and company. It just kind of keeps going downhill. Your thoughts on where we are right now with A&M, and I guess anything you have on the game itself, but obviously the games don't seem to be the biggest talking points right now in College Station.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think the Connor Wigman, if we're going to assume that he's playing in this game, you wonder, what does a plan built around him look like? And obviously, one of the challenges that we're seeing this season is the complexity of the A&M offense. Well, okay, let's give it to the true freshman and see what he can do. Like, you've got to make some adjustments here. They need to get a lot more help from their run game, which I think is 105th in the country right now in rushing. The offensive line and just the pass protection has been among the worst in the country this season. There's just a lot of issues with that offense. I mean, it's not Iowa bad, but it's pretty frustrating to watch right now with as talented as they are. With as many guys that they're working with, and I know the absence of Anaya Smith and Max Johnson and some guys, the guys they lost up front, like Bryce Foster, is tough. But man, offensively, they got to figure something out here, because Ole Miss can score pretty fast on you. And if this turns into a 4-game slide, I think the bad vibes just continue. You look at the schedule, and there's opportunity here. They've got some winnable games coming up where you can maybe string together, 2 or 3 wins and clinch a bowl and all that stuff. But yeah, right now, I mean, A&M could not need this game more in terms of just kind of improving morale and getting everybody to calm down.
Yeah, what are the odds that Jimbo Fisher will, in the offseason, change everything about what he's done his entire career and be a CEO and not a play caller?
Yeah, I don't know, Paul. You sound a little skeptical in the question. Seems like kind of a leading question there.
Yeah, it was a little bit. To me, there's no evidence that a guy who is very high strung is going to be able to also bring in somebody who he's not going to be able to make also very high strung.
Yeah, and look, A&M has the money to go out and get one of the best and most expensive offensive coordinators in the country. We all know that. Like, if Jimbo Fisher is going out and trying to do that, to me, it's similar to Ohio State last year when they knew they had a problem. Like, Ohio State is not going to lose to anybody else for Jim Knowles if they want to get Jim Knowles. You know what I mean? I think A&M has a chance to go do this. Now, the question obviously is, what direction do you want to go in? Do you want it to be, more, I don't know, like the Kendall Briles, Jeff Lebby kind of version of things? Do you want it to be a little bit more pro style? Do you want to, like, what is kind of the ideal way to go win the West is obviously like a curious conversation, but I think he'll be willing to make changes because it's just been so brutal this year. But certainly contractually, he doesn't have to, and he could even just say, screw it. James Coley runs the offense now, and everyone can deal with it. Like, he doesn't really have to go outside his building if he doesn't want to. But I think it's going to make sense at the end of the year here for them to bring in somebody that just gives them more juice on offense and makes people excited about the direction of it, because at the end of the day, it's going to affect recruitment. It's going to affect the kind of players that want to come to A&M. And I think you have to give people a reason to believe it's going to be better this year.
Max, I think we've pretty much touched on most of the big stuff, but I guess nationally the biggest game, Penn State, Ohio State. Your thoughts on the Buckeyes and Nittany Lions in the Big Ten?
Yeah, this would be another game for Ohio State to really prove, that they're the best team in the country. I mean, I think they had that opportunity this week. Defensively under Knowles, they've been one of the best in the country. And you could look at that and say maybe that's the quality of the competition, and we just haven't really seen them against great teams yet. But that offense, you saw it last week against Iowa, can kind of do whatever it wants when they're clicking and when Stroud is right. I think this is a chance for Ohio State to make a big statement. And Penn State, there's a lot to prove in this after Michigan just, beat you down a couple weeks ago. I think that they're not a bad team. They're definitely a top 25 caliber team, but I do feel like they're just overmatched for Ohio State and what Buckeyes have shown this year. And man, that Ohio State-Michigan game this year is setting up to be even better than last year.
Max, if you had a Heisman vote, or I know you do, I know we're not allowed to give it out once we give it. Is it C.J. Stroud? Is it who is it for you? Is it Bryce Young? Who is your Heisman pick right now?
Yeah, I think so we do like a weekly Heisman straw poll, just real unofficial, and kind of send in your top three, whatever you're thinking on Saturday night. I think this week I probably had Hooker, Stroud, and Max Duggan. I think were my three. Certainly you can make a case for a bunch of other guys. I think I had Bijan on my list a couple of weeks ago. Like, I think there's a ton of dudes in the race right now, but I think those probably Hooker and Stroud you have to call the top two. And I just love what Max Duggan has done this year. What a great story, but certainly a case for Blake Corum or a bunch of other players right now.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time. Thanks for jumping on with us early. That's Max Olson, theathletic.com. Great follow on.